What's up, guys? Luke here from Spotlight on Spurs, and it's the second episode of the My Spurs Preview. Delighted to welcome Ricky in from Last Word on Spurs. How are you doing, sir?
Luke, I'm good, mate. Thank you. How are you, bud? You okay?
I'm not too bad. If this Morgan Gibbs White saga saw a conclusion, I'd probably be in a happier spot. But I'm sure we'll discuss that when we ask the 10 questions that we've got coming up. So we'll get straight into it. The first one to kind of start with is just obviously the thoughts on last season. What a memorable season in some ways, horrible in others. But what was your thoughts on last season and covering the whole every single second of the season? What was your thoughts?
Well, I mean, Luke, bless you. Listen, we're approaching nearly a decade of Last on Spurs, and I'm aging by the day, to be honest with you. Last season, my thoughts. I mean, look, it ended magnificently. I mean, it ended in probably one of the best weeks of my life, actually. Supporting Tottenham with obviously winning, obviously in Bilbao, and then the parade and what followed in the summer, really. That is what I want to take away from the season. I don't really want to have to think about too much what came before that, because what came before that was it just felt weeks of real frustration and real negativity at times. And for someone like me that is quite a positive person, I found myself obviously having to record Last One Spurs on almost a weekly basis, being quite demoralised from what I was seeing. And it's very difficult because I don't like to go after people, managers, players, whoever. But as fans, and what we do with our content and whatever, we try and call it as we see it, right? And I'm acutely aware that players, I don't think, go out there to not perform. And I think there's a lot of issues behind the scenes as to what led to the league season being what it was. But it ended in the most magnificent way possible by winning that trophy. And I think everything about Ange Postecoglou, I know I was throughout the whole season really concerned about the nature of how Spurs were playing and where they were going. The man gave us, as I mentioned, really one of the best weeks, if not the best week of my footballing life, by achieving legendary status by winning the trophy. And, again, I wish Ange all the very, very best for the future. To have those moments again, it was at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium for me with my family, my beautiful boys, and, it gave me moments that it will live on forever. So it ended so well. And no one really remembers the Premier League season because already we've seen the refreshment from BBC of the table. So it's almost like it's forgotten, Luke, but the trophy will never be forgotten.
We certainly won't forget it. It was a tale of two sides, wasn't it, for the league?
Absolutely.
For the season. Unforgivable what he done in the league, but then unbelievable what he done in the cup. And it's like whatever way you sit on that sort of fence. So completely agree. Absolutely incredible season. Try not to focus on the negatives, but as you said, you have to be honest in your reviews, and when you're on YouTube, you have to be consistent.
It's just like that way that song goes, Luke. 17th, I don't know how. We won it in Bilbao. I mean, that literally is like that. The song sums up the season. That's honestly that is the catchphrase of the season. It wouldn't be any other way. If we finish 15th, maybe it takes the gloss off the song in a way. So
that's the problem.
Only Tottenham could
exactly
could do this.
That's exactly it. So Spursy, as people like to say. Now moving on from last year, as you said, that's last season. Now we need to go on a run and we need to progress and we need to do this year on year, which Daniel Levy's already said that's what we're going to do. So that's perfect. Moving on now. So in terms of Thomas Frank's appointment, so obviously take of this what you will. Obviously, for me, when Ange was in, was Thomas Frank the man to take over? And when Ange left, obviously people's opinions then change and you start looking into managers. But overall, what are your feelings on the Thomas Frank appointment?
Yeah, I mean, look, very positive. Again, I think Frank is a manager that's really earned this opportunity to manage a big club, and Tottenham are a big club. Contrary to what people might say out there, we are a big football club. I think, there's been so much talk over the last 18, 24 months about the fact Tottenham needed a coach, needed someone that's going to come in there and essentially be able to play more than one way. I'm not saying Andrew only played one way, but I think, we've seen with Frank and Brentford what he's done there is adaptability, flexibility with system, the general improvement of players' development, as we've seen throughout his time there, and why many of those players now have gone on this summer and gone on earn big summer moves. And Frank himself has been obviously given this opportunity at Tottenham. And I think, look, for us and for Frank, the great thing about this is that I think you look at the past where Tottenham have gone for previous managers, bar Ange, I would say, in the last few years, the likes of Conte, Mourinho, I mean, how much of these managers actually want to be at Tottenham? That's again a massive thing. And I think with someone like Frank, I think he really is relishing the opportunity to be the Spurs head coach. He really feels for him. This is a big moment in his career. He's worked so hard for this. He's worked, look at the 6-7 years he's put into Brentford and that continued development season upon season upon season. I know there was one season when they finished, I think, 16th, but really they weren't ever massively battling relegation in that season. I think for a club that just want to stay afloat, it's hard. I know some people are concerned about his record in cups, but again, you're looking at a club that really for them, success is staying in the league season in, season out. So I think overall from what we've seen from Frank, and I've only just seen the one pre-season game so far, but just the fact of seeing somebody, and there's no disrespect, somebody that is quite more active on the touchline and seems to be very much in tune with the game, following it, making adjustments, making slight tactical changes, bringing the clipboard on at half time. I mean, it just feels that already, and there's no disrespect to the previous regime when I say this, it just feels already there's a bit more structure and a bit more technical insight going on behind the scenes. And look, it's only early days. Of course, I'm going off one pre-season friendly, which to be fair sounds crazy, but I have got a really good feeling for Thomas Frank. And I think it will all come down to, I'm sure, will be amongst the questions we've got covering here. The man's got to be backed. Otherwise, Luke, it's going to be the same situation for every manager that comes from Tottenham, that there's that ceiling there and you can only go as high as you're allowed to go. And, many have tried to punch through that glass ceiling and haven't been able to do so. So time will tell whether he gets the backing that will enable him to be successful.
No, I completely agree. And you mentioned it earlier in regards to what issues we had last year. And a lot of people will look at tactics and Ange. And I kept saying from very early on that there are a lot of changes that are required. We need to change the coaching. We need to change the medical department. We need to change the recruitment. We need to change the strategy. Thankfully, all of them things seems to have been put in place. Obviously, at this moment in time, and I have to keep saying this on these previews, that at this moment in time, we don't have Morgan Gibbs White over the line. But obviously, there looked like that there was a big push to get him. So signing him and Kudos in the same window within a couple of days it seems to be a push in the right direction. But do we follow through with that is obviously the key to it. And then obviously you've already mentioned it. I labelled them negatives at the start, but obviously thinking about the wording of that, it's more the unknowns with Frank, isn't it? We don't know how he's going to be in the cups. We don't know because he's got what we would expect to be a higher level of the squad.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's one of those managerial appointments where I know for some out there was a feeling that Ange deserved the third season. There were some that wanted a change. I get that. I just feel at the moment that the manager needs our support and needs to be back heavily in the market. And you mentioned Gibbs White there. I mean, look, I was away for 2 weeks and people were telling me not to come back. I was told not to come back. I was told not to come back because they look like they're making 2 sides in the space of 48 hours. Anyway, I'm back and everyone's saying I'm so demoralised. I was like, it's not my fault. I've only just come back into it. So. Yeah, I mean, look, it's difficult with that one. It's obviously a legal situation which is ongoing. I mean, we don't know too much about it, if we're being honest with you, Luke. Again, when it's where it's at now, with regards to a legal situation, you're not going to get much comment from both sides. The player we know now, we can confirm, obviously, he's gone out and joined the rest of the squad for Forest pre-season tour. So, I mean, that in itself would tell you if a move is close, why would he be going to that tour? We have to be honest and say that because we can only go off factual information. The facts are he's not with Tottenham. The facts are he's with Forest. He's on a pre-season tour. And you would imagine that if a move was anywhere near close, he wouldn't be going on that tour. And that is really just the facts at the moment. He's got a heavily pregnant wife. And I think for anybody that is a parent out there, they know the concern you have when you've got a baby coming into the world and the fact there's a high-risk pregnancy, but the fact there's a change of location involved in there. It's a stressful time for the player, stressful time for the relationship, stressful time in their lives. So we wish him all the best. And hopefully we see him in that Spurs shirt and that little baby boy or girl is going to be in a lovely Tottenham baby grow at some point.
It looks so good. It would look so good. The Spurs baby stuff. I'm sure you're aware. It's quite good that sort of range.
Oh yes, they've had their money's worth off me for sure. They
have. We've kind of touched on it a little bit already, which I thought we would do anyway. But what sort of things are you expecting to see, Frank? What is Frank going to bring? And we don't necessarily just have to go down the tactics. He seems to be a great person. He seems to be brilliant at building a community, bringing people together, which I actually think Ange was pretty good at as well, to be honest with you. But what do you see Frank bring into Spurs?
Yeah, I mean, all the above you've just said there, and I think having somebody that just seems like a thoroughly decent human being. That's not to say Andrew wasn't a decent human being. I think somebody that's quite measured, controlled, composed. I think you see him in press conferences. Doesn't really get to any degree rattled by the questions that are asked by a journalist. He keeps it kind of level-headed and sensible. It'll be interesting to see how he does adapt, though. I mean, I say what I mean by adapting is the fact that Brentford to Tottenham is a big jump, and you can get away with, no disrespect to Brentford, being knocked out of the Carabao Cup in the third round and not being a problem. At Tottenham, if you get knocked out in the third round or the fourth round of the Carabao Cup, it's a problem. The same way with the FA Cup, you go out those early stages, it's a problem. I think it'll be interesting to see how he does handle the multiple competitions, the multiple cups, and how he can maybe work that as a squad, because it won't be easy. I think at Tottenham, we know we all love our cups. We've just come off the back of probably one of the greatest nights in our recent history with Bilbao. And I'm not saying there's an expectancy to go and win the league. I'm not saying there's an expectancy to go and win the Champions League. But I think there's an expectancy now that we don't wait 17 years, Luke, to the next night of winning a trophy. So I think there will be a real emphasis this season on trying to go as far as we can in the cups. And for Frank, that's going to be a different, all due respect, take on maybe what it's been at Brentford. I think he's maybe used the cups as, again, maybe a development route to some of these younger players to see how they'll perform and then put them in the league and see if they can progress. With Tottenham, we're a club that want to be winning those cup games to progress and hopefully, fingers crossed, be in another final and go and win one. So I think that will be interesting. In terms of what he's going to bring, they'll bring that energy, as I mentioned, somebody that really has got, as we've touched upon already, a real adaptability to his style of play, flexibility around the tactics. And I think for a young squad, a hungry squad that wants to develop, that wants to improve, I think he ticks a lot of boxes. But it will go back to, again, when we say what Frank will bring to Tottenham, it's also what Tottenham will bring to Frank. I think, again, it will come back to what they can give him in the market. That's going to help him. But I've got no doubt, look, Tottenham aren't a 17th place team. We won't be 17th next season. We just won't be. If we are, I definitely won't be here. I'll be somewhere else because I don't think I can do it again. But,
good luck to everyone if we are.
No, listen, I think we'll be a much better team next season. But yeah, Frank, we know it's about what Tottenham bring to him as much as what Frank will bring to Tottenham.
Yeah, completely agree. And again, that kind of leads us on to the next thing. Is there any concerns with Spurs right now? And again, this isn't just about Frank. This isn't just about tactics. This could be the fact that we haven't got Morgan Gibbs-White over the line. It could be that there are, from what we can see, there doesn't seem to be an alternative at this moment in time for Morgan Gibbs-White. Now, that could be a positive in terms of he's the guy, we want him, we're going to go all out for it. But obviously, if it doesn't go through, then do you have any concerns? So what would you say your concerns are currently at Spurs?
Well, my concerns are that we are, at the time of recording this, we're 24th of July. We know we've got a pre-season tour coming up and we've only made one significant signing to bolster the squad.
Yep.
Now, I'm not saying we need 7, 8 or 9 or 10 players. I think I've said this consistently on the last one on Spurs recently, that I think for us, if you were to tell me we're going to bring 2 or 3 genuine players that are going to come in and raise the level of the first team, I'd take that. I'd accept that. I don't think we need 7, 8, 9 squad fillers. We don't need that. We're not actually too far away from having a really, really good squad, but it does need boosting. Daniel Levy, in that most recent rare interview, the reason for sacking Ange Postecoglou was he wasn't able to compete on all 4 fronts. But Thomas Frank at the moment, bar Kudus, and I know we've got obviously Toko Katai that's come in. It's pretty much the same squad, Luke. So the next manager's going to find those challenges about how we can be able to compete over 4 fronts. Not going to be easy for him. And it's going to need that support. I think we all know the areas Tottenham need. It's been crying out for a defensive midfielder for a long time at genuine number 6. There's different profile of players out there. We know they seem to like Polina. They've had some form of talks from intermediary stage with the player. I think it's a pipe dream if we can bring Adam Walton here. I think it's going to cost you upwards of 100 million to bring him to the club. Fabulous player, don't get me wrong, but I just don't think that's realistic this window. You've then got the likes of Douglas Luiz that's been linked. You've got, obviously, João Gomez at Wolves. So that's an area I think Tottenham need to focus on. I think we are quite light as well at left back. I think that's not a secret. I think we do know that's an area. And even with the forward line, I know Frank seemed to indicate for him that it's not an area that he wants to improve, but does that forward line scare you? I mean, that's the question. You look at our forward line, Solanke up top. I think Solanke's a good player. I think he was starved of service last season, being honest with you. Tell, I would hope that under Frank, we are going to see a real developing player there that will definitely improve under Frank. Whether he can get to the heights we want him to is another question. And obviously, we've got the situation around Sonny's future where it does appear now, by a lot of talk coming out in the most recent few hours, Sonny's future seems to lie away from the football club. And I would argue, even though you've got Kudus in there, Kudus will probably maybe play in that Son position on the right, can also play on the left and can also play through the middle as well. I still think we're short of a genuine another top winger. But this is the thing with Tottenham. Very rarely under ENIC have I ever come out of a window and actually felt we've got all that we need. But to be fair, look, you speak to probably other Premier League fans of other Premier League clubs, and they always say, come out of a window and I want more. But I just feel with ENIC and Tottenham in general, and that we come out of a window and we always feel we're one or two short. And that'll be my worry again going into this, season. Are we going to feel the same? There does need to be improvement. We all know that. So those are my concerns. My concerns are that the reality is we were told, I know many were suggesting there's going to be a sizable investment coming in, the sponsorship, and the fact there's going to be a massive change around the football club. To date, again, from what we can base it on, I can only base it on what we're seeing, Luke. It's very much the same Tottenham that we're used to every summer, where we're going to go into the latter part of the summer transfer window, waiting on players that are going to hopefully bolster the first team. And again, it goes back to, are we going to get those players that are going to directly influence and improve the first team?
Yeah, I completely agree, and completely agree on all of the areas that we need improvement. I've been saying for a while that we needed competition at the left centre back and left back. We need competition in I prefer a more of a deep lying playmaker role now instead of a Paulinho, which I think we needed under Ange. I think we need a probably slightly different profile, but not against it. I think he could be an improvement on what we got. And then completely agree, the numbers are there in the wing and forward positions, but we need more quality in them positions. Completely agree. And I'm not bothered whether that's a striker that comes in, whether it's a winger, someone's versatile, whoever that may be. But I definitely feel like there are three positions that need to be strengthened. And you've already mentioned it. The problem for me with an Adam Walton is that might be your budget, but then you don't go and get anyone else. So is it worth going all out for one and then not improving other areas that are required? For me, not so sure. But moving on to the next question. So obviously we've already discussed it, players that we need in. We've already got a massive squad. We need to shift some out. Obviously there's been a lot of names mentioned. Son, as you've already said, that's kind of come about in the last few hours in terms of the LA Galaxy links, and MLS seems to be a destination that's been linked quite a long time, to be honest with you. Who are your thoughts on? Obviously, we don't have to include all the youngsters and everything else who potentially go out on loan, but the main sort of squad, is there players that you think we need to get rid of? Is Son one of them? Richie, Bizuma, they're the sort of players I'm thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I think Hill, for example, I think Hill's going to probably end up going because every time he comes here, disrespectful to pre-season, barely sees much game time. Seems to sometimes do okay, then goes back out again. So I imagine Hill's going to probably end up going out on loan or maybe on a permanent deal. Solomon, I think he had a good season at Leeds last season. Again, it depends on really what Spurs do for the rest of the window in that area. Frankie's saying he's got decent options there. And to be fair, I don't think he actually name checked Solomon when he was talking about the wing options there, which I think is quite telling. So I'd imagine, look, if Leeds would like to bring him back to the club, I'm sure they'll do everything in their power to. So Solomon's one I think to keep an eye on. I would imagine he'll head out the door. I mean, Basuma, Bentancur, there was rife talk a few months ago that Tottenham had entered into advanced negotiations with Bentancur over a new deal. That has gone very, very quiet now. I'm not sure what's happening there. Basuma, I mean, if we've got the Basuma that turns up every week like he showed in Bilbao, we'd be wanting Basuma. But the problem with that Basuma is, I want the Brighton Basuma. I want the Basuma that I saw at Brighton. And I don't think we've seen him in a Tottenham shirt enough. The inconsistency week to week is so frustrating with Basuma because I think the biggest problem is that there is a player in there. And again, do you think to yourself, right? I mean, as we remember, he came in under Conte, and Conte didn't appear a massive fan of his. And then, look, if we remember, he was brilliant in the first 10 games, Basuma, under Ange, and
Luton, wasn't it?
The Luton game, whatever happened with that sending off, I just don't know what happened to Basuma. He wasn't the same player since that Luton game. But having said that, he played really well in Bilbao. But it's the biggest night of their lives. I mean, they probably, you'd hope they would have paid their best because it's a final, right? It's a chance to win something. So I don't know. I mean, Frank did name check Basuma when he was rattling off players that played against him last season that impressed him. So I don't know whether that has got an opportunity there. I mean, the thing is, Tottenham have got about a 40-man squad, Luke. So there's going to have to be some movement. Players are going to have to go out the window. Players have to go out this window. So I would be surprised if one of Bentancur, Basuma don't leave before the end of the window, because we've got to find some room if we're going to bring in a genuine number 6, if that is what Thomas Frank wants. And by the indications that we're getting out there, by the fact what we're looking at, and you're going to go by the fact of the assumptions and who we've been linked with, that does feel an area Tottenham look like they know they need to strengthen in, and an area as fans we know we need to do. So if that's going to be the case, someone's got to go to make that room up. So, yeah, I imagine that'll be a key area that we'll be looking at. In terms of other players, I mean, Richarlison, Frank has just really recently mentioned he likes Richarlison. That might upset some fans, but I think Richarlison, My issue with Richarlison isn't his goal record. That's not a problem with Richarlison. My issue is his availability, which is for some players their best ability. We just can't keep him fit. So, yeah, I think at the moment, as I'm talking to you right now, there's some breaking news coming through. Typical Tottenham that Spurs are working on a deal to sign João Palhinha. That's coming through from the Telegraph at the moment. So,
Look at
look,
this.
that in itself tells you if that's the case, then there's going to have to be some movement. So, yeah, I would imagine, like I said, one of Bentancur Basuma probably will be leaving the club as things stand.
He did name check Bentancur in his first interview
He
as
did.
one of the main
Yeah,
players. So
he did.
that made me think maybe I always said it would be one of two.
Yeah.
If we managed to get two out the door, then it would be two coming in. But because he name checked
Yeah.
him and obviously did leave out Son's name as well.
Yeah.
And then obviously there's been a lot made of the recent interview where he spoke about whether he will be making the decision around the captaincy. Now you've got a player there who's been there 10 years, is the captain, just led them to a European trophy, and it hasn't been confirmed he will be the captain. Obviously there's a lot of question marks there. So yeah, as I said, completely agree. I think Basuma's probably the one, and I'm so glad that I only started YouTube 3 months ago, because if I started YouTube when we were getting him from Brighton, I would have been singing his praises and I'd have been clipped up everywhere saying, what am I talking about? Because I thought we was getting one of the best centre midfielders in the league.
We all did, Luke. We all did. The reality is that the fact that Tottenham are working on a deal to sign somebody that you'd arguably say would be in his place, or one of the places of the team, indicates to you they know it's an area that they need to fix and sort.
Yeah, and for me, I think Morgan Gibbs-White, if he does come in, I don't know how your feelings are around this, but I feel Morgan Gibbs-White will probably play deeper as well. I think if you've got a Palhinha type, you could end up seeing him and Palhinha together in the midfield.
It just looks like a whole refreshment of the midfield, and you think about Maddison as well, on top of that as well. I mean, that again is very, very, very exciting. So I guess, with Tottenham and the way they operate in the window, you just don't know what they're going to do next. So I think it's exciting by the fact that it does feel at the moment, and again, it's only a feeling, although my frustration and my concern has been our lack of movement, one thing I will say is that at least the profile of players we're going for this window appears to be more experienced players that have been there, either with Premier League or international experience, which gives me the confidence that we're not going to have to wait 6-12 months for these players to adapt. They can come in and hopefully fit in straight away. And Frank is very, as we've touched upon, very flexible with his system, and that would hopefully benefit a lot of the players that Tottenham are looking for.
Completely agree. Again, I feel like we're touching on most of these points before they're even coming up anyway. But that's
if you asked me 5 minutes ago, am I happy with the business? It probably might be a different answer. But if you're going to say to me,
that is the thing. This is the thing in terms of. Yeah. In terms of Gibbs-White, obviously we've got that there. I think that if there's a lot of kind of issues in the fan base at the moment and the lack of activity, I think if Morgan Gibbs-White got over the line, and from what we can kind of read between the lines, it wasn't a Spurs thing that I, for instance, if we go back to January, the Gay last minute bid, I felt very much that was a bit of a token. It wasn't really.
Likewise. Yeah, likewise.
So
I felt the same about Luke.
With this, it doesn't feel like it was necessarily a Spurs problem. It feels like if everything would have been agreed, it would have gone through. So that would have changed people's opinions. But in terms of, we've only got really kudos through the door at this moment in time with a couple of youngsters, as you've already discussed. Are you happy if Morgan Gibbs-White gets over the line? Would you then be happy if you wasn't already? You've already mentioned Palhinha. If he gets, you know what I mean? So where are you currently sitting at? Obviously, it sounds that you're a little bit unhappy in terms of what we've done so far.
I mean, I just think for when the chairman comes out and says, we want to win the Premier League, we want to win the Champions League, what does that do to the fan base? You set an expectation there. Look, admittedly, that a timeline on it, okay. But, if you say those words, we've not said those words as fans. This is what's been communicated by the top of the football club down to us. That is the expectation, or that is the aim. So that is the aim and that is the expectation. You've got to act like that. And, so far from what we've seen, I can only talk about players that are actually in a Spurs shirt right now. Mohamed Kudus, I think, is a good player. I think, again, he's got another level to go to, which Frank will get him under. Kota Sakai, from what we hear, he's a good central defender. Again, Japanese football, I can't claim to know I'm a Japanese expert or a knowledge of the Japanese league. So you hope that he's going to be a good player, but you just don't know. So to answer about, are you happy with the business so far? I think the reality is at the moment that I'm hopefully going to be happy once it's ended, the window. But, I've said it time and time again. There's been very few times that I come out of a window under Enid with all due respect and feel, right, I'm very, very happy with what we've done and we're raring to go. But by the fact we're being linked with the players we're being linked with does give me some degree of happiness that we're at least targeting the right profile of players. If we haven't even signed them yet, at least we're targeting the right profile.
Yeah, completely agree. And then you are Levy. Who do you bring in, and who's your
God.
number one target? And again,
Just to be clear, I've got that. Just to be clear, I've definitely got Daniel Levy.
Or Don Paratici, whoever you want
I'll
to be.
take more Don
You're
Paratici than Daniel Levy, I think, at the moment. God, I don't need any more. Who should Spurs be? I mean, I think look, the number one target, it appears, I think, for a lot of fans out there now, just because of the way it's dragged on, Luke, I'll be honest with you, I think if we don't get the Gibbs White deal over the line, I would say God help us, God help me on last one on Spurs. We don't get the deal over the line because we've spoken about that really through the start of the window to now. It doesn't get done. I think that's a big, big problem. That obviously we're going to have to wait and see on. But I think, again, the issue we've got here at the moment is that it is a legal issue, which is a big, big, big issue because we don't know what's going on and we're not privy to the situation. So that's not what everybody wants to hear in terms of the lack of coverage on it. But the reality is, look, I think for Tottenham, for the player, I think he'd be a great signing for the club. I think he honestly could be a player that has got levels to go up with that. I think Frank can get him to those levels as well. And I think, having that creative spark in there, not to say Maddison's not a creative spark, but I think with James at times, James would have really, really good days, and there'd be days he just go missing and be very, very quiet. And I think with Gibbs White, there's the ability there that if you can unlock him, there's a real consistency there, which also might bring the best out in James as well. I know people, Brennan Johnson, his Marmite, some people love him, some people hate him. Like he gave for a lot of us the greatest moment in our modern history by scoring the goal that won us the final. Frank wanted to work with Brennan, wanted to work with Archie Gray. How much does that help Brennan Johnson push on having someone like Gibbs White in the team? I think these things you've got to consider. So I think given what's gone on this summer, I think he probably is the number one target because he's clearly a player that the club have identified. He's clearly a player that wants to come to the club. My argument would be now is, does he need to do one more on his end to try and force that through?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think at the moment, a lot of fans are saying that he needs to do it now. I don't think he does. I think it may be another week. Obviously, what's gone on in the personal life, I hope that both clubs are being respectful over that as well. But I would say that going on tour, going to training is exactly the type of player that I would want. And if he stopped doing them sorts of things, I'm not sure I'd want him at Spurs because then he would only do that to us if someone else come in. So I'm glad the way that he's acting. However, it will get to a period where I think maybe he needs to dig his heels in a little bit more. So completely agree on that one. These ones are a little bit shorter, possibly, depending on how you look at it. One to watch this season. And that can be from young. It could just be Kudos, for instance. I know he's a new signing, so he could be the one. Who's the one player that you're excited to potentially see the development of this year?
I mean, I don't think he's one to watch because I think we all were blown away with him last season. But I just saw Bergvall with a second season under Frank, the Scandinavian connection. I think there's so much more levels he can go to. And I know it sounds again not mad because we keep looking at other midfielders we're talking about, Gibbs White being my number one target and the fact that I'm not even mentioning Bergvall's progression. I think Bergvall has got the opportunity to really, really step up. And I think, this is where, again, midfield starts looking exciting again now. Suddenly you bring a João Palhinha in who can sit in the midfield, break up play. You've got the likes of Bergvall, Maddison, dare I say, and Morgan Gibbs White as well. Suddenly that midfield looks reborn. It looks reborn. And then you add to that the likes of Tell under Frank, what maybe you can do with him. We have to wait and see. Brennan Johnson under Frank, who clearly is a player that he's wanted. And then look again, the fact that, Kudus, I think, again, many excited by him. So I think there's more than one to watch this season. I think Kudus could have a really exciting first season. I think we saw that with West Ham. He exploded there. I think the thing with Kudus is trying to keep him motivated and trying to keep him grounded that, it's all very well doing it one season. You still have a 2 or 3 because I think that was West Ham's argument that he seemed to really tail off after the first season. So, yeah, I think Bergvall, for me, I know he was great last season. Maybe you argue he's the one to watch. Probably at the moment, a very close call between him and Kudos because I think Kudos could have a really exciting first season, given what his first season at West Ham.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think Bergvall could be a top player, and been discussing this recently on a few podcasts about Bergvall, and there were some deficiencies in his game, particularly constantly driving forward, not looking for the other pass. However, I think that if we bring someone like a Palhinha, even maybe a Morgan Gibbs White, bit more experience alongside him, he might make better decisions. And sometimes you just need to almost be coached on the pitch. And I think he would benefit from that. I'm not sure whether a Bentancur Basuma type, I'm not sure how much of a leader and a kind of coach they are on the pitch. Whereas a player like, I was going to say the name Ben Davies, which some would say shouldn't be associated with a club. But if he's on the pitch, you know that he's coaching an Archie Gray, for instance, through the game fence. And I feel like Bergvall could definitely could end up increasing his own potential just on the basis of having experience around him. So I completely agree with that. And this one, it could kind of link into what you've already said. But your hot take for 25-26, the last one that we had on said that he has a sneaky feeling that with some of the business that people that fans clubs are doing, that they might, and at the amount that are in Europe, he thinks that Spurs may have a sneaky look at the top four, which I think is a shout. But that was his hot take. What's your hot take for 25-26?
Well, I think it's an easy one to say. We won't be 17th. We won't be 17th. I don't think it's a hot take. It might be a bit of a cold take, that one. A hot take. I think Tottenham will go back into the top six. I really think, I think, I say this, the caveat for me, I think top six is achievable, providing Frank gets the tools he wants this window. Clearly evident, obviously, what he's looking for. We're seeing the links now strongly to a central defensive midfielder. Polina seems to be the one they like. The fact they're working on the deal for him will give you that indication. I mean, look, I think all in all, for a manager that is not used to having to fight on all four fronts like the season that's going to be coming up, I think this is going to be a very, very interesting campaign for Frank. Many eyes will be on how he manages the fact of having to battle for competitions. And by the fact for Tottenham fans, as I said at the earlier part of the show, we love our cups. We love our cup football. Cup football for me, this is not to do down the Premier League, but the emotion I feel for cup competitions, I always say to everybody, my feeling when I go out of a cup, it's pure devastation. I think it's just as hard, I feel, as losing to Arsenal when we go out of a cup. That's how much cup defeats hurt me, And it's not to do down the rest of the Premier League games, but if you were to ask me kind of what the priorities are this season, I always say for me, Champions League, it's great to be in there. I mean, realistically, to win it, I think it's going to be very, very difficult. Let's be honest with Luke. I think, but for me, I'd love to see the club try and go again, have the expectancy, the FA Cup, the League Cup, really take those competitions seriously. And, I think we're all due now. We need to beat them lot down the road. I mean, it feels like it's been far, far too long. And it's the one fixture that really, I'm quite a rational guy. I'm not someone that really loses my rag these days with something. I've been around it. When I was younger, it used to really upset me and affect my weekends. And now having kids and a wife, and I just can't be like that anymore. I've got to be a dad. I can't let football affect me like that. But the Arsenal game, or the two Arsenal games, is where I lose all rationale, to be honest with you. It's kind of like those defeats do stay with me for days. Like, they hurt. And they do also, I think, change your opinion on certain factors of what is going on at your club at the time, where by the nature of the defeats in those games, the London derbies, Arsenal specifically, Chelsea, maybe less so, because I don't feel that same way with Chelsea as I feel about Arsenal. Like, there is honestly a feeling that, I don't hate people in my life, Luke. I'm not that kind of guy, but I despise Arsenal as being our rivals. That's the thing. And a lot of my mates are Arsenal fans. I love them as people, but when that rivalry is there, that rivalry is there. So, we need to make sure we do something against them this season, because it's just been far too long. And I don't think I can go back into my WhatsApp chats next season if we don't turn up in one of those fixtures. If not both, please, God.
Absolutely not. That European Cup is going to be used as a response to virtually everything, because otherwise, I have a feeling you might be right, especially in the big derbies. And as you said, specifically performance related as well. It's not just scoreline; it's out of performance, and some of them were very abject. And again, kind of touched on it a little bit, and we'll kind of just go through the different trophies, because I've seen it quite a lot. We've had there's been quite a few questions that have been asked on podcasts, and everyone seems to sort of be forgetting about the Super Cup being part of this season as well. So expectations we'll go through the different trophies. So we'll start at the Super Cup. What's the expectation?
We're playing one of the best teams in the world in Paris Saint-Germain, but they also will not be at the top of their fitness, So there is an opportunity here. I just really hope we don't. If we lose the game, I really hope fans don't overreact. And then you find that some fans might be saying, "This is why we should have kept Dan, because he wins trophies." Yes, Ange has got a great record winning trophies, but as we said earlier in the show, you can't forget the league season that we had, and the nature of it. Look, Super Cup, be amazing to win it. It'd be perfect start for Thomas Frank. To get that trophy on board would give him a lot of credit in the bank already for those that maybe feel it was the wrong appointment. But in terms of overall expectation for the Super Cup, I just want to see a good performance and us go out there and actually believe we can beat PSG. If we don't get the result, we don't get the result. But I want to see the belief that we can beat them. And because I think the problem with Tottenham in finals is we've seen really bar the Bilbao final. I think we've had I think it's only 48 shots in the previous 4 finals before that and never scored a goal. So there's been a real kind of maybe imposter syndrome when we get to a final. Should we be here? Do we deserve to be here? We don't normally show up. So if we can show up and just give it our all, then that'll be fantastic. Of course, we want to win it. Look, these kind of games aren't for losers. These games are set for winners. So be magnificent to win it. I just hope there isn't an overreaction if we lose it.
Yeah, I keep saying that I don't mind finishing second in this one, as long as it's not 2 minutes too far behind. So I think
you don't want to get battered. I mean, you don't want to get battered.
No,
you do not want to get like a 5-6-1 battering.
Yeah.
They're a good side PSG, but we've just seen Chelsea smash them up. So the fact Chelsea have smashed them up, there'll be that feeling there. Maybe Tottenham on their day, if they have a good day, and PSG have an off day. And by the fact of the fitness that I've touched upon, there's a real opportunity there for Tottenham potentially.
Yeah, they're not due back. I think they're due back like 2 days before. They can choose to come back earlier, but yeah. Completely agree. It could end up being a perfect fixture for Frank, because as you said, unless we go and get bad, if we lose the game by the odd goal and it's a decent performance, people are not going to be on his back. And if we win it, then obviously you're right. Then all of this Ange talk goes out of the window. He's got the trophy, and we kind of move on. We'll then move on to the Carabao Cup. I know obviously you said that you very much want Spurs to be competitive and that seems to be the word everybody's using at this moment in terms of like expectations. It's competitive in as much as we possibly can do. Carabao Cup and FA Cups, what are the expectations? Obviously, a lot of this is down to who you draw. You could draw City.
Yeah, I mean, look, every season the expectations for Tottenham to get as far as they can in these competitions. So we don't want to get out the fourth round, which unfortunately Thomas Frank's been used to doing with Brentford. But I do think that Tottenham will get it. I think he's one person. He's a very clever man, very very clever, astute guy. Like he will switch on. He'll know very quickly what the fans want, what the fans expect, and I think he'll try and give the fans what they want. Whether they can do it is another question. But look, the expectations are for Tottenham to go as far as they can in all the domestic cups. All you ask for in a cup competition, Luke, is that if you're going to go out, you go out fighting and you go out to maybe the better side. Last season, the League Cup defeat against Liverpool. I mean, we were great in the first leg, but the second leg, we just turned up there knowing we were going to get beat. And the same way with the Villa game in the FA Cup, we turned up within a minute, we were 1-0 down. There was that feeling last season that I don't even want to go back there. Obviously, you can see my face just drops even thinking about that time. Got to focus, got to hopefully go as far as we can in the cups. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. And then, so the Premier League, obviously, you said you think top 6. Do you think that's that?
Possibly, I think top 6 could. I think we could gate crash the top 6, because you've got to say that it is about gate crashing the top 6 now. We finished 17th. I've said this before, and it seemed to maybe upset some people. I said if Tottenham were to finish in the top 10 and win a Carabao Cup, I think that'd be a great season for Spurs. I honestly think that'd be a great season. I think some people maybe underestimate how hard it is to go from 17th to straight back into the top 8, the top 6, the top 4. We have seen clubs do it. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Forest have been the example to that. They've got the top 8 last season. Got Europa Conference League football. I'm thinking back. Leicester won the league. I mean that was a bit of a crazy season, right? But expectations are if we can try and keep all the players fit, if we have a squad competent on facing all 4 fronts, which to be fair, I'm putting that caveat in there because that's TBC to be confirmed to see if we do it. I think we've got a great opportunity of getting back in amongst the top 6. Providing we get the players that are going to help Frank to get there. And
then last but not least, winning the Europa League pushed us into the Champions League. What are your expectations? Obviously, it was a slightly different format this year. Would you be expecting Spurs to progress through the league table? Would we be more like a playoff team? What would be your expectations?
Yeah, I mean, look, Frank hasn't had exposure to Champions League football before, but Champions League nights at Tottenham are always special nights, and the fans will get behind the team. And I think it'll be as much as Frank's tactics, as much as the fans, what they showed, for example, the Bodo Glimt home game, how incredible that atmosphere was. If we can get a squad that is up to the level that we know it can be and want to be. Back the manager, and I mean that sufficiently during the window, and also go into these games believing we're going to win. And I think that's the thing with Frank. There's no disrespect again to keep going back to previous tenures. I think there will be an element where we will be able to change mid-game and be flexible and be adaptable to the teams that we're playing. There will be detailed scouting done on all the teams we're facing, and we're not just going to play the same way every week. This isn't the way Frank's set up. So I've got confidence that we'll get out of the league table. I think from there also depends on what we are like at that point in the season with regards to where we are in the league and the FA Cup and the League Cup and kind of where Tottenham are at that point. You know, again, I've got positive hopes for the season, Luke, but I'd be lying if I said, you know, in my mind, I'm thinking we can win the Champions League, despite Daniel Levy thinking or saying that's the aim. But who knows? It's football. It's Tottenham. You know, if someone told me we're going to finish 17th and win a trophy, would I have believed you? Maybe I would have believed you. It's such a crazy club. I don't know. So, what can I say? It's Tottenham.
Yeah, no, again, I completely agree. I think if we can get to the knockout stages, if we can progress either through the league or through the playoffs and able to get to the knockout stages, I think that's a brilliant brilliant first season almost for Frank and obviously for us to be back as well. So, and that is all of the 10 questions. They're complete, guys. So, Ricky, massive thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it, giving your time. Obviously, guys, if you can please like and subscribe to the channel. We're trying to push on to get to near the 1.5K now. Got over the 1K, brilliant. So only been around for a few months, so the support's been absolutely incredible, and having brilliant people like Ricky come on is obviously helping the channel grow. So really appreciate it. There will be more coming. As I said, I'll probably be looking to do 2 or 3 of these a week. So we'll be getting all different opinions on. And yeah, just a massive thank you to everyone. Have a great rest of the day, and come on, you Spurs.